Hello fellow book lovers, I'm Kaylee and welcome to Blue Geranium Books. So today I'm here to talk about 7 underhyped science fiction and fantasy novels. So there are so many books out that it's very easy to miss books, and maybe you've heard of a book but you're not familiar with it or the author and you just don't know if you should read it or you just missed the book entirely. So today I want to talk to you about 7 books that I've read that I really enjoyed that I feel like don't get a lot of hype. The first one I want to talk about is 6 Wakes by Mar Lafferty. This is a science fiction novel about a woman who wakes up. She is the clone of a crew member and the entire crew has been murdered and all of their clones have woken up. So they essentially have to figure out what happened, who murdered them, and why, so that they can continue on their mission. This was a really enjoyable read overall. It's part mystery, part science fiction novel, and Lafferty just did a really great job creating the world and weaving the mystery in, and I really enjoyed it, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next book I want to talk about is Juliette Marillier's Dreamer's Pool, and this is the first in the Blackthorn and Grimm series. So this follows Blackthorn, who is a healer who's been imprisoned for many years, and she is offered a deal. She can be released from prison as long as she promises not to seek vengeance on the man who destroyed her life and imprisoned her, and she is willing to offer help to anyone who asks. When a nobleman whose future bride has arrived, and she doesn't seem to be the woman that he's been corresponding with. He believes that something is wrong, and he asks for Blackthorn's help along with her companion Grimm to figure out what is going on. Once again, this is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. This has a lyrical quality to the prose, and it also feels very much like a folk tale. And Marillier does that a lot. She kind of weaves myth and folk tales into her stories, and this one is no different. I once again gave this one 4 stars, and I'm definitely planning on continuing with the other books in the series. So the third book I want to talk to you about is Agatha H. and the Airship City by Phil and Kaja Foglio. This is the first in the Girl Genius series, and it is fantastic. If you like steampunk and science fiction, this is definitely a book you should look up. Agatha is an assistant in science lab, and she seems to be doomed to always being an assistant because nothing she builds ever seems to work. When the university she works at is overthrown, she ends up being taken captive on this Baron's ship, and the whole story kind of unfolds from there. It is an industrial revolution, it is war, it is fantastic. I think I gave this 4.5 stars, and I'm definitely continuing on with the rest of the books that are available in the series. I believe there are 4 out total right now, and I'm definitely looking forward to more installments of the Girl Genius. So the next book I want to talk about is The Fold by Peter Clines. This is a science fiction novel about a man who is pulled into an investigation. Essentially, they have opened what they're calling the Albuquerque door, and they appear to be able to fold space-time. So things aren't quite what they seem, and he is sent to investigate. This is a science fiction novel that basically kind of reads like a movie, and I don't mean that in a bad way. The action and the plot are very fast-paced, and you feel very much caught up. The action is written kind of like you would see a movie, and it was just really enjoyable, really quick read. Clines is actually probably best known for his Ex-Heroes series, Expatriates, etc. But this was my first exposure to him, and I have picked up several of his novels since and really enjoyed everything that I have read by him. So if that sounds like something you're interested, I highly recommend The Fold. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars, and I've been itching to reread it for a couple of years now, so yes. The 5th book I want to talk about is The Clockwork Dynasty by Daniel H. Wilson. I think I might have mentioned this in another video, like a tag video, but this is a science fiction novel about automats. So there's 2 main characters we follow. The first is June, and she is a historian who is researching the history of these clockwork devices that have been found throughout history. The second is Peter, and his destiny is tied in a way that is not first seen, but this book, I love this book. I've read it twice so far. the characters of Peter and June are just so interesting and enjoyable. The way they interact with each other is very interesting. This is a super fast-paced book. It's not super long by any means, but I certainly hope that Wilson revisits this world in a sequel. I know that he's written a short story in his short story collection about it, but I feel like there is so much more that could be explored in this world. The science is very interesting. You don't get a ton of detail, and I can't explain why because that would be a spoiler, but I definitely enjoyed watching the story unfold. You kind of go back and forth between time periods, and that was something I don't see a ton in science fiction, so I definitely enjoyed that aspect of this book. If you like audiobooks, I definitely recommend the audiobook because it's narrated by David Gentoli and Claire Coffey, who are two of the actors who were in Grimm, the TV show. If you've watched Grimm, you know who I'm talking about, and they did a fantastic job narrating this novel. Yeah, if you like science fiction, kind of, it's not steampunk, but it does have the automats, and that, of course, kind of gives it a clockwork flavor. I definitely recommend this book. It was a 5-star read for me, and I keep talking to anybody that I can about this book, and I keep making people read it. So go read it. So the 6th book that I want to talk about today is The Dragonstone by Dennis L. McKiernan. So this is a fantasy novel that has its roots in epic fantasy. It's older, it's from the mid-90s, so, you know, older. But it definitely owes its roots to classic high-stakes fantasy. There's prophecies, there are elves, there's a fellowship, if you will. Essentially, there is a lady elf who has visions, and one day she has a vision about the fall of Mythgar, and it leads her on this journey, and she ends up gathering a group of companions to help her along her way to try and save their homeland. This I read at the recommendation of my husband. He actually had 4 series that he gave me the first book in to read, and this one was by far my favorite. And the other authors include Robin Hobb, Raymond Feist, and Terry Brooks, but this one was the one that I loved the most out of all of those authors. So, not that I didn't like those other authors, but this one was my favorite. I highly recommend this if you love classic epic fantasy, because all of the tropes are there, the prophecies, all of it, they're there. If you love that kind of old school fantasy, this is definitely a book for you. I highly, highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars, and I've actually been planning on rereading it this year because I want to continue on with the Mythgar series. So the last book I want to talk to you about is another science fiction novel, and what kind of video would this be if I didn't mention Connie Willis at least once? So that book is Crosstalk by Connie Willis. This is science fiction, but it is in a world very close to our own. Essentially, the technology is just a bit more advanced. So one day, Bridley's boyfriend suggests that they undergo this new procedure that essentially helps couples become more connected and to communicate better before he proposes marriage. When she wakes up from the operation, it turns out that she might have connected with the wrong individual, and the story kind of goes from there. It's brilliant. It's utterly brilliant, and like everything that Connie Willis does, it explores kind of human nature, it explores the nature of relationship, of family. There is just so much goodness and humor. I think the blurb said something about Nora Ephron mixed with P.G. Wodehouse, and that actually pretty much fits this book to a T. I just enjoyed everything about it. I enjoyed the characters and the writing style, obviously. And if you enjoy kind of contemporary-esque science fiction, I think that this is definitely one that you should check out. Because Connie Willis is amazing. I mean, there's a reason that she's won the most Hugo and Nebula awards of any writer, because she is fantastic. And if you haven't read this book, or you haven't read Connie Willis, you're definitely missing out, because she is utterly fantastic. This was a 5-star read, and I highly, highly recommend it. So there you have it, 7 science fiction and fantasy books that I feel like are underhyped and that people should read more of and talk about. I hope you found something to read in this video. If you've already read one of the books, talk to me about it below. Or if there's something that you feel is underhyped and you think more people should read, leave me a comment because I'd love to check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy reading.